Hey guys, Chris from the Ultimate Recycler, and after last week's episode of unboxing those tools from the emergency storage shed, we're more enthused about shed stuff now. I really enjoyed finding some old tools of mine. We found plenty to sell. It was much more lucrative than those vintage computer things, although we did sell a few of those, so that was kind of nice. Episode 79 now. And I did say last week we'd tackle a box of jars down below. I don't know how, well, I don't even know what's in the jars. It might be a quick box, in which case we might grab another one. Let's go and have a look and see what we can discover today. So with that yellow crate gone, we open up some more concrete, some more floor space, square meterage. Let's get that box of jars out, and then, as I said, if they're a quick one and we don't waste too much time, we might look at the blue tub underneath them. But things are nice and open here now. We have empty shelves everywhere. I do have to admit to putting a bit of new stuff here. This vintage test equipment was from inside the main shed. You may have noticed in the background at times. I did move them because I wanted to set up a shelf. I'll show you that now actually. Just a temporary shelf, just somewhere where I can put the jars that I'm sorting hardware into. As these jars fill up, they go to the shop and we get $5 or $10 per jar. And since I've been sorting out a lot of little bits of hardware lately, I needed somewhere just to lay all the jars out so it's easy to allocate, screws to one and springs to another and all my other various assortments. I've been saving these old square nuts, and I did sell a jar full of those through the shop the other day for $10 because people that restore old machinery, they love them. Where else can you find these? You can't go to your local hardware and buy 100-year-old square nuts. So anyway, there's a buyer for everything. But that shelf unit was out of the carport when we cleaned that up a few episodes ago, and I just thought it'd be really good to prop up on this bench here. I still have to declutter all this area so I can get some lawnmowers in here, but just as a temporary fix and somewhere to help me sort, I put that shelf in there, which meant that that vintage test equipment had to be put somewhere. So it won't be here long. I do have to make some decisions on it. There's a really nice old early oscilloscope there. I think they're homemade jobs, a battery eliminator, basically a power supply, a high voltage regulated power supply, and an isolation transformer. So I have all those that I need. I might test them, maybe repair them if they need fixing, and maybe sell them. Not sure, we'll get to that down the track. But now, let's grab that box. Okay, I'm really curious as to what's in this box, or in these jars in this box. So let's have a look together. Hopefully it's not too heavy. Oh, yep, it's stuff from my old shed, and it's probably hardware that I had been sorting for the shop, but there could be anything in some of these jars. There's some nice vintage jars here too with the old painted lids. We have, looks like we have stoppers for the old chairs, lots of coffee jars, brass screws. What's in this one? Oh yeah, lots of self-tappers. All sorts of stuff. Everything except dog treats. Sorry, Coco, no treats. Lots of nice old empty jars. Not much in them. But anyway, we'll take it through to the bench and have a good look. So it shouldn't take too long to sort this out now that I've got all my jars spread out. And although I don't think there'll be much value in here. Although value really isn't what we're after. We're just after space. So this will empty out a bit of space. We'll just go through. They look like brass screws. I think I'll go through. I'll get all the jars out, and it'll just be a matter of topping up the jars I've already got. And there are some empty ones. In fact, that's an old coffee jar of some sort with a tin lid. We'd get $5 for that jar on its own in the shop. And I won't be putting hardware in these jars. I think it's worth selling. This is an older one as well, but there's no embossing on that at all. It's probably not quite interesting enough, just a few nails on that one. Here's another one of these ones. It looks like I had silver contacts in that. Clearly there's none there now. I must have put them in a different jar. There's another one, silver. Okay, so I've probably reevaluated what I've stored in jars at one stage. That looks like someone had sultanas in that originally. I've got a few lids for these somewhere, so I think we'll sell some of the jars, so we're going to get some value. And a lot of these little ones don't have anything in it. Oh, that one does, little clips. They're old jars, but they haven't got enough going for them to actually sell, and the lids are very rusty. Most of these are empty. A few self-tappers in that one. Empty. We have some crimp-on spade fittings, and that's a cute little jar, not much going for it though. And some hose fittings. Well, I usually bulk these up in the shop and sell them at $5 a lot. More of these jars, or a lot of these are empty. There's some light globes, so I do have a jar with light globes, automotive globes, so they'll sell okay. Another older jar but no lid, and that's got saucepan knobs in it. So yeah, when you're a second-hand dealer, you keep everything. In fact, there's a nice little Art Deco one, nice Art Deco shape to it. So that will actually be useful, because if I get a nice Deco saucepan that's got a broken knob, well, I can probably use it. So I might keep some of the better ones. Here we have some little wire staples with a crimper. Coffee jar has just a few bolts in it, so most of these are near empty. An old die-cast wheel, probably from a toy. I do have a box of toy wheels somewhere. Oh, there's some more there too. An old coffee jar with brass wood screws in it. So we're just about at the bottom of this already. Oh, there's some soldering iron tips. These will sell. I think these suited the scope soldering irons. In fact, that should even eBay. They're all brand new, original, genuine tips from a scope soldering iron. I might check a price on that. There's a few of those in there. In fact, that's the heating elements that go with it. So we might get some good value there. Coffee jar with, it looks like relays, 12-volt relays, probably from driving lights or something. Lots of wood screws. There's some brass ones in there which I will separate. And some toggle bolts. So I've got some of those I found the other day here too, so I might make up a jar of those. And just a couple of sockets. What have we got here? A Sidchrome, made in Australia Sidchrome socket. Well, I'll keep that. You know I'm collecting them. And that's a Sidchrome swivel drive. Okay, that's interesting. I'll probably keep that one too. That's the end of our tub. Excellent. So I'll sort all this out. We won't have a lot of value, but I will check a few things, particularly the soldering iron parts. And I reckon we've got time to do something else out of that shed. Just before I go and get the other box, let's have a look at what I've sorted out here. I've kept these jars here. I've got more lids, and there's 4 of them with lids. We're going to get $5 each for those jars through the shop, so I'll add them to the list at the end of the video. I thought the 4 12-volt relays from cars, they're probably driving light relays or something. I should be able to get $5 for those. They're untested, but there's a fair chance they work. These vintage jars, I couldn't be bothered washing up. The lids are quite rusty, but they are cute old jars. I'm going to put them as one lot in the shop for $5 a lot, and someone can clean those up. They're just a bit too cool to go in the recycle bin. Some of the stuff I'm keeping, well, I'm keeping the old wheels, and I've got another jar of, I put all the smaller toy wheels in. I'll keep those in case I need them for repairs down the track. The saucepan knobs, I decided to keep all those because quite often I do need to replace one. And I'm keeping the small globes. I put all the automotive globes into a jar, which I'll sell. But these little ones are like out of radio dials, and I'm likely to use them when I'm restoring stuff. So we'll hang on to those for now. Also, the chair tips, also handy for walking sticks and things like that. There's various sorts. I certainly use those from time to time when I'm putting old stools or tables or something in the shop, and they're often missing them, so I will use those. The pliers, I threw out the old staples. They were only second-hand ones, and there wasn't many of them anyway, but I'll put those staple closing pliers into the $1 box at the shop. So that's what I'm keeping there. The big money spinner hopefully will be these soldering iron copper tips and carbon elements. I've put them on eBay. I'll show you that listing before we finish the video. So that has processed all the stuff. A lot of it I just put into existing jars I had here. Some of them I started new jars. And as I said, when they're full, I'll take them to the shop and they sell. But I'm not writing down any value for those. But this shelf is proving very handy just for sorting, because I can find things really easily. And I have a jar for pretty well anything that I think I can sell, including things like, well, there's the automotive globes. But things like when I'm scrapping out electrical stuff, I tend to save good clean pieces of this insulation material. you know, people have to buy it for jobs, so a jar full of that might get $5. I don't know, I'm going to try it, but I know I sell lots of hardware. Springs are always popular, they never sit in the shop long. Micro switches I do sell, the little connector blocks, I get a lot of those out of things I scrap. Nuts and bolts, of course, and some random stuff as well. Things like just steel bushes and things that are going to be handy for farmers. Rubber grommets that are still good. There's a bronze bush. I tend to save the bronze bushes rather than throw them in the brass bin, because a jar of those I'll probably get $10 for. So, and brass hardware down the bottom as well. So yeah, I know most of you haven't got the ability to do that, but I've got the shop and I find it sells well, so it's the best way of recycling it, and I get much better than scrap value. We also ended up with some more jars, because obviously I go through a lot of jars, and I do have a few in reserve in various boxes. Another box down the bottom. So it is handy to have those, and again, better recycle them this way than putting them just in the bin to be broken up and recycled as glass. Okay, I thought we'd do this blue tub next, but it's full of tools and things, and it's going to take too long. So we'll do that next week. I'll leave it on the corner of the bench. I'm not going to show you now. We'll do it next week. Okay, the army box. Let's do the army box, because I had a peek, and it's not full of tools. It's just full of bolts. So it'll be basically one job lot. We'll get a few dollars out of it, and of course we get to sell the box. The good thing about moving that army box is that we've actually freed up more concrete, even though we haven't actually processed one of the tubs. It's still a long way forward as far as uncovering square meterage in the shed. So let's have a look at this army box. They're normally dated somewhere. I think they were ammunition. Oh, here we go. 1945. I don't know what ammunition they actually had in them. Any of you guys that collect militaria will probably be able to tell me. But I know that they turn up everywhere in sheds. They must have been used as toolboxes all around the country after the war. I guess you could buy them at army disposal shops. And, you know, unless they fill up with water or sit outside, they're pretty well going to last forever. In this one we have bolts, as I said, lots of coach bolts. These are all good galvanized bolts. The coach bolts have the round top with the square underneath. They are really handy for landscaping jobs and that sort of stuff. These would last outside for a long, long time. It looks like there's actually quite a few nuts with them. Yep, down the bottom. So I'll take these out of the army box. I'll put them in something that I'm happy for them to go, even a small bucket or something. You're going to pay a few dollars each for these at a hardware. I would imagine. I might look up the Bunnings website and just see what they sell at. But I'm thinking, you know, maybe $20 or $30 for the lot. I'm not sure how many's there. We'll count them out. I'm going to make them cheap enough to sell quick, and someone will get really good value rather than going to a hardware store and buying individual ones. They all look to be the same size, so I'll take them out. And as for the box, well, it's pretty good. It's a little rusty on top, but that would actually clean up pretty easily. It's only surface rust. I think I'm probably going to ask $25, maybe $30 for that one. See what the bottom looks like when I get the bolts out, but I don't think it's going to have any serious rust problems. And yeah, it looks pretty good on the base. So that's going to add a bit to our total for this week as well. I've now processed all these bolts. I've taken them out. I've counted them, and there are 108 bolts there, and there is actually, I think, 112 nuts. So even if we just work on $100 bolts. I did check out online through Bunnings, which is Australia's sort of largest chain hardware store. I couldn't find the exact size in Imperial, because I think these are 3/8 inch by about 7 inches. The closest metric in the galvanized bolt was, I think, M10 by 175 mil, and they were selling online for, well, they were quoting $2.20 per bolt. Of course, they're a bit cheaper if you buy in bulk, but you know, $2.20 or so by a bit over 100. We're looking at almost $240 if you have to go buy these individually. Incidentally, I call them coach bolts. I also saw them referred to as carriage bolts. The website called them cup head bolts, but they all serve the same purpose. They're just known as different things. So well over $200 to buy them individually. What say we put $50 on the lot? I think someone will grab them at some stage. They may as well be new because they're going to work perfectly as a new bolt does. They're well galvanized, and there's a pretty good chance they're actually much better quality steel than what you'd buy today. The box itself, I didn't go to too much trouble. I just brushed it off and wiped it over with a bit of an oily rag. It tends to highlight the printing. It's nice and clean in the bottom, just surface rusty, but very solid. I'm going to go $30 on that. So this wasn't a bad little box, even though it was quick to sort. We've got hopefully about $50, about $30. We'll add that to the list, and I'll come back to you shortly. Just before we get to the notepad, here's my listing on eBay for these soldering iron tips and heating elements. And you can see here I've started them at $50. I am offering free postage, but they should go in a standard envelope, so that won't cost me too much. Of course, there's eBay fees as well. They don't look much in the packets, but if we scroll through here, you can see presentation is everything. Took me ages to stand them up like that. And I did lots of shots with various lighting conditions so people can see that they're brand new, other than some minor surface rust on the carbon tips or the carbon elements. They pretty well present as new. The copper tips are certainly perfect. So I've presented them on here as best I can. They sell for around about $3 to $4 each plus postage online, and there's something like 30 odd items here because the carbon elements are the same price. So this represents pretty good value for someone. I don't know that any one person would use this many, but perhaps it's good to have spares and maybe they could swap them with their friends or something. So anyway, we'll see how we go. That's what I've got them on eBay for. They've been on for a bit over a day. I've had 7 views and there's 1 watcher on them already. I'll let you know in a future episode how they went. And that brings us to the notepad. $45 for the jars. There was 9 jars, and as I said, I've got some spare lids. I think that should be quite achievable. A lot of people like to use them as kitchen canisters. The 12-volt relay is $5. I went through the other stuff before. I'm calculating $40 for those soldering iron tips, given that I have eBay fees and postage costs. However, there's a pretty good chance they might even get a few bids, so we could do better than that. $50 for the bolts, $30 for the army box. Gives us a grand total of $175 return, and I think that's very achievable, and I haven't calculated in all the other little bits that I've topped up my other jars with, and I did find a few other odd bolts in that army box as well, only a couple. So there we go, I've got some good shop stock, I've made some more space, and hopefully we've got a pretty good return out of it. So thanks for watching, guys. I haven't added the total, but we're a bit over 12 grand return out of that shed so far. And as you saw from the last episode, thanks to Jeff asking, we're probably only about a third of the way through that shed. So it's going to add up to a lot of dollars eventually. And I know there's a couple of larger things that should get pretty good money, which we will no doubt uncover in due course. Next week's episode, we'll go through that blue tub. There are some tools, there's some thread cutting dies, there's some pipe flaring tools, there's a bit of scrap metal, a bit more hardware. If we get through it quick enough, we'll grab something else as well, because I want to keep forging away through this shed. Thank you for watching. We'll catch you in the next episode. Bye for now.